Coach Thompson, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to jump on here and talk shop a little bit. So for the listeners at home, will you tell us a little bit about your background, kind of your motivation, and where you are currently?
Okay. Well, I'm currently at Springfield College as the Director of Strength and Conditioning, the Director of the Graduate Program in Strength and Conditioning, and a Professor of it's exercise science, but we're changing actually the name to I'll be Professor of Strength and Conditioning will be my title coming up here within the next semester. We've had some changes in names of majors and departments and so on. So I started and got into strength and conditioning really younger. It started when I got my first weight set back when I was like sixth grade, like everybody else.
Yeah.
Like your typical boy, I benched and did curls every day. And then I got into powerlifting in high school, football, played football in college. Then I went on, thought I got a degree in athletic training from Ball State University. Went to work at a high school as a wrestling coach, football coach, strength coach, athletic trainer, and sixth grade math teacher.
Wow.
So a little bit of everything. Thought I wanted to be a PT. Applied, didn't get into PT school, so I had the opportunity to go to University of Illinois. I was going to do a one-year master's degree, and that came about by Rex Sharp, who had been my athletic trainer at Ball State. It's kind of funny the way I always talk about connections and impress everybody you know.
Yeah.
Well, when he was a student athlete, his head athletic trainer was a guy named Dr. Jerry Bell, who was in Illinois at the time, needed someone, pay for a GA position to pay for school, and I could do my one-year master's degree, get to PT school. Well, I went there, got PT school, then got offered a job working with athletics, mainly wheelchair sports, which was very different, very interesting, both athletic trainer and a strength conditioning coach.
Yeah.
So really gained a lot of knowledge of the shoulder and injury prevention and some of the stuff that they kind of call cutting edge now. We were doing 25 plus years ago.
It's funny how that works, huh?
Yeah, it's just everything comes around.
Yeah.
It's working with a lot of some really good coaches, a really good PT named Tim Milliken and a strength coach named Marty Morse, who were excellent there. And I just started taking classes for my doctorate because it was free. Ended up after 7 years with a PhD. Then interviewed at Springfield College, and kind of the rest has gone from there. So in my time at Springfield College, 22 years, I've 50-50 athletic academic appointment. So it's very kind of unusual. You don't see that a lot anymore, the teacher-coach model.
Yeah.
So half time for the athletic department, half the time for academics, which is really unique, especially with the grad program. It allows me to do a lot of things that I couldn't otherwise do.
Yeah. Okay. So will you dive into a little bit of that dual role that you play and how the time management kind of works with that?
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I used to kind of have have to kind of consciously switch from one to the other. But for the last few years, I only teach classes with strength and conditioning in the title, which is really cool. I teach strength and conditioning, advanced strength and conditioning, internship in strength and conditioning, and applications of strength and conditioning.
Okay.
So that allows me just to always be fully immersed. I'm probably unique not only as a strength coach, but as a professor. I get anywhere from 50 to 70 applications to the grad program.
Wow. Okay.
And pick 10 to 12. Then those are the only students I teach.
Wow.
So I teach those for the next two years, and so every year get a new group of GAs, a new group of students, and it works really well. It used to be kind of difficult to separate when I was teaching maybe some different classes. I've taught 18 different courses at Springfield.
Wow. Okay.
Things I learned early in life, I was just say yes to everything. So when I got there, can you teach stress management? Absolutely. I can handle stress terribly, but I'll learn to teach stress management. Yeah. So, then it was a little kind of difficult to kind of switch out of from one to the other. But as I've done it over the years, it's gotten a lot easier to just really all the roles merge together. I see strength and conditioning as a combination of the science, the application, and the coaching. So I'm always trying to concurrently develop those three areas in the students. So it's really just a continuation from the classroom into the weight room.
Okay. No, that's awesome. So diving a little bit more into some of your reasoning and your background and motivation, right? So what is your passion necessarily in life, and why do you kind of do what you do?
What I love to see is a freshman come in. What happens to a student as they come in from a freshman to their senior year? As far as the athletes, it's freshmen usually come in too confident or terrified.
Yeah.
And it's kind of cool to see the ones that are too confident kind of wake up and realize, all right, I'm no longer a big fish in a small pond like I was in high school.
Yeah.
Buy into these kind of things. And then the terrified one to really get their confidence.
Yeah.
But really to see as they develop, not only as athletes or how they move, but as people through the four. I encourage my staff to lead with character. Everybody always talks about caring and that type of thing. But that is the important thing. You want to be a role model and be someone that can help kind of guide that athlete through their college years. And then the other part with the grad students, I look back on now being there so long, I'm starting to see students that I've had are now very, very high positions in the world of strength and conditioning. So, that's the other thing, just to watch how, students grow as coaches as well as athletes through the years.
I love that. And will you speak a little bit, since you have been there for quite some time now, will you speak a little bit on what it means to you staying at one place versus kind of moving around and balancing ambition to progress in the field with kind of consistency in one position?
Well, I'll admit to you, when I came to Springfield, and one of the reasons was who was my girlfriend at the time, now my wife for 20 years, got a job in Springfield. So I kind of followed her out here was one of the reasons. And I knew a lot about the tradition of Springfield College with athletics and basketball and James Naismith and everything, but I really didn't appreciate how really what the college was like. Everybody's probably heard of the book "Make the Big Time Where You Are."
Yeah.
And, I tell, that all the time, but it's really, it feels comfortable, and it's allowed some consistency. I was at two big schools, Ball State University in Illinois. About 20,000 and 40,000 students, and Springfield's about 3,000. So the community atmosphere, the feel, the passion for sports. Almost half of our undergrads also play a sport, if not varsity athletics, but club sport. So there's a lot of passion for it. And then the other thing that's helped me kind of avoid getting in, I guess, going on cruise control or whatever from being somewhere so long is I've got to stay on top of things because of the students that I bring in every year. They come firing questions at me. I encourage them every day to ask questions. We start off every class as, what did you learn since you were here the last time? And I go, so I'm like, this is what I learned. Yeah. Since yesterday. And it could be something simple as, something that happened in the weight room, a podcast I listened to, a book, anything like that. So I think it's, unfortunately, the way the field is, people have to jump around a lot to really move up the ladder. Yeah. I was pretty fortunate that actually when I came in here, I was on 3 1 2-year and 3 1-year appointments before I really had a more of a tenure track or program track position. So I just followed that. Just do whatever they ask. Make yourself indispensable. If they say, "Can you work with this team? Work with that team. Can you teach this class? Teach that class." I worked everything as an athletic trainer, professor, to really about, it took about 7 years to kind of end up in the position that I really wanted to be in. But the college just kept, giving me reasons to stay.
Okay. And so moving forward, right, so working in athletics and also in the classroom, right, how does the intern development look, and how does the classroom kind of meet the weight room?
Well, like I said before, with the 3 components as far as the science, the students, they almost all come in with the science. They understand the science really well. We can tweak it. They learn a little bit more in, like neuromuscular adaptation, motor learning, those types of things. And everybody's trained. From there we go into the different progressions and regressions, that type of thing. But really coaching, and that's what we're trying to. We're actually working on now some different proficiencies and trying to really periodize the internship experience. Because not everybody's ready to lead a warm up at the same time or demonstrate. I'm really working on with my staff to try to break that down even more. With being a grad program, we're able with the internship. We meet once a week in the classroom.
Okay.
So in addition to being in the weight room, we have that time in the classroom. And that's where, they're reading books, they're doing presentations on the books. They get presentations on the, coaching philosophy of not only me, but all my graduate assistants. It just allows us to do a lot more of the education stuff that's kind of hard to do sometimes in the weight room. Yeah. In addition to that, in services every week that we use and try to get the interns involved in even presenting some stuff they like. So it's kind of ever changing. I feel like the internship program we have gets better and better every single year because we're constantly tweaking it, constantly learning from the last year.
Yeah, no, I love that. Okay. So what recommendations do you kind of have for young strength coaches and their educational path?
Well, I recommend it. Let me backtrack.
Okay.
Let me back a little bit. Depending on what they want to do, and we're pretty much to a point in this field where you need a master's degree. I think we're getting there anyway.
Yeah.
And I don't that just because I'm director of a master's program, but that's in a lot of places. I'll even have students that are applying for jobs during their last semester, and they're getting weeded out by HR because they don't have that completed master's degree. So starting to see that a lot more. So when I tell students if they want to be a strength conditioning coach and get their master's, either go to a program that has a strength conditioning major or get a GA somewhere working with teams, getting that hands-on experience, and then get your degree in a related field.
Okay.
Now, there are a lot of coaches going other ways there that have gone out and just interned all over the place and spent about the same time, 2 or 3 years, and then they're getting good jobs. But I think we're really getting towards that master's as almost entry level. Yeah. And it used to be if you were going, people would always say, I never really bought it, that, if you're going to the private sector, you don't need a master's degree. But we're seeing a lot more and more in the private sector, too. I've come across several places that will only hire people if they have a master's degree.
Okay. So that's a perfect kind of segue, right? So what are your thoughts on college versus private sector and kind of switching between the two and limitations of being at one versus the other?
Well, that's a good question. And I was thinking about this as far as, I don't know if there are limitations. I guess what I'll tell my students is we meet regularly. We meet their first week there, and we continue to meet every semester on what they want to do. Where are they now? Where do they want to be? And what do they need to do to get that? If someone wants to be a Division I football strength and conditioning coach, and they better get some experience in Division I football. Yeah. If you're a professional baseball coach, they better get some baseball experience. But for most of the students that want to just work Olympic sports or aren't really sure, I try to have them get a variety of experience. Send a lot of students to Mike Boyle Strength and Conditioning. Mike's a friend of mine, and I know they get to coach. I've got 2 grad students with them right now, and they coach and coach and coach. Okay. Sometimes in the private sector, they'll get, at least as interns, more coaching experience because there's just constantly groups coming through. Sometimes with some of the coaching rules, the 5-coach rule, if you do an internship, especially with like a big football program, you may not get as much coaching. But as far as professions, I think there are great coaches everywhere. And that's the one thing that is unique about strength and conditioning. I don't know if you can make really unique to strength and conditioning, but I think you see it even in athletic training as well. It's not like the professional strength coaches are better than the high school strength coaches. The private sector coaches are Division 3, 2, 1. Yeah. That you see great coaches everywhere. So I think go where you can develop the most, where your passion is.
Okay.
I'm much better, I'll tell you, working with college age students than I am.
Yeah.
The younger kids, I tend to, maybe as I get older,
Yeah.
I don't have as much patience with it as some of the college students. Where, like my wife, she could work with young kids. She's degree in physical education. She can work with young kids. Great. I think it depends on your personality. I have a lot of students that come in that I can kind of read them, engage what they're going to be like, to really where they're going to fit in the best.
I love that. Yeah, no, I mean it's very true because certain personalities fit with certain age groups much better. And I would agree. Like younger kids are a lot more to deal with. There's just a lot going on. So yeah, that college age you can connect with them a lot more. There's more of a personality. So.
Yeah.
So okay, and then. Kind of moving with that a little bit, right? So within college, there's been kind of there's a lot going on in terms of, there's been coaches leading conditioning sessions or strength coaches using conditioning as punishment, and a lot of repercussions and negative things coming up because of that, right? So what are your thoughts on this new recommendation, or I guess not necessarily new, but a little bit more on the forefront recommendation that requires sport coaches to kind of get conditioning improved by strength coaches, or to basically not use exercise as punishment?
Well, it's something that we've been talking about for a while at Springfield. We had someone come on campus last year and brought up the discussion as exercise versus as a punishment. And we got a hold of these recommendations a couple of weeks ago. I met with our head athletic trainer, and met with our athletic director, and actually, we just this morning sent out an email to all our coaches that we're going to adopt these recommendations. So within that, not only the conditioning part, where basically says strength and conditioning should be in charge of all your conditioning essentially, or at least be approved, like you said, of the conditioning. But a 7-day grace period before any physical testing for preseason, and that's across all sports, fall, winter, and spring. And then the exercise as a punishment thing. So I have never been big on using exercise as punishment. I have done it. We've done it, you used to do probably a lot more, a lot of up downs or whatever you want to do. I've seen plate pushes. I've seen all kinds of different punishments. And what I've gone to now is I just kick the athlete out of the weight room. If they're not willing to do what they need to do to be successful, I'll kick them out, and that's usually enough for them to. That's usually more punishment than 50 up downs to them, that they're not allowed to train with their team that day or whatever, and they're going to hear it from their teammates. And I think you can punish them enough without using anything physical.
Okay, and then will you touch on that grace period, that 7-day grace period, and how that works and what that looks like?
Well, it's within the recommendations. It's kind of up to interpretation that they don't recommend any strenuous testing until 7 days to acclimate. And we've got away from a lot of testing anyway. It's only going to affect really a couple of our teams, because we, especially at the Division III level, they're gone all summer.
Yeah.
We're not even open in June and July. Our weight room's not even open in June and July. So I just saw too many kids getting injured because they weren't in good enough shape. So in talking with the coaches, we've really gotten away from those anyway. But with those recommendations, the 7 days to kind of acclimate them. Then based on that, you can do your testing at 8th day in. So that's what we're planning on doing. The things we would have done with the 2 or 3 teams first day, we're just going to do the 8th day.
Okay. No, and that makes a lot of sense, right? And so kind of with that, do you think this is going to have a bit more teeth? Because right now it's just kind of a recommendation, right? So it's up to the school, the AD, and that kind of staff whether or not they want to move forward with it. But do you think it's going to get a little bit more teeth? It's going to be more of a actual, more of a legislation, or?
Well, it's interesting because if you read through like the frequently asked questions, there's a question in there about whether it's adopting it, is it legislation or whatever, and they say they recommend talking to your athletic director and your school council, so your school lawyers. And I think that's where I think most lawyers would look at this and say, it makes sense, legally. And then just talking with my athletic director in the AT, I don't see anything bad that can come out of it.
Mm-hmm.
I know some of the coaches are worried that, well, the athletes know they're not going to be tested, they're not going to work as hard in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you can figure out if they're in shape or not during practice.
Yeah.
So I think it's just protecting those handful of athletes that may get hurt during conditioning or even worse. I mean, we've had some deaths during early season conditioning, summer conditioning, that type of thing. So I think since this is really something to help athletes, I think it'll probably get some more traction.
I like that. Okay, and then moving forward a bit, right? You teach. We touched on the courses that you teach, but will you give us a little snapshot of some of the things that you go over in each course? For example, what might advanced strength and conditioning kind of look like?
Okay. Well, advanced strength and conditioning is interesting because I change it kind of every year.
Okay.
We'll do a lot of the way I've done it the last couple of years, anyway, or at least last spring. Monday, I usually present on a book by a coach or a collection like Dan John. I've got a PowerPoint of all the Dan John books, and Coach Boyle, Greg Cook, and I'll just Cal Dietz, all kinds of different coaches. A lot of the coaches that are out there right now coaching, putting out a lot of stuff out. And then that would be every Monday. We kind of spotlight or focus on a coach.
Mm-hmm.
Then Wednesday, the student research day. So the student is going to bring in a research article, anything they find interesting, and they're going to lead kind of a discussion on that article.
Mm.
And I try to get things that they can apply right away. So it's really interesting from those discussions, and they're pretty good about getting some stuff that's a little different. From those discussions, we've implemented I don't know how many things into our program or into the internship program. And then on Friday, we do what's called Friday with a Coach. So we'll have a coach. Usually it's the coach we talk about on Monday, Skype or FaceTime in.
Mm.
So we pretty much any coach, big coach you can imagine that would comes online with us. We've got Greg Cook, Cal Dietz, Jill Holsworth. We've had John Tureen, Mike Boyle. Mike Boyle actually usually comes on campus every year and talks to us.
Okay.
So that's what I try to do with the advanced class. But I'll tweak that from year to year. I don't require a textbook for that class, so it gives me the opportunity to change it up.
Yeah, no, I like that. Okay. And then what is the kind of difference between like strength and conditioning and then strength and conditioning application?
Well, it kind of goes back to that 3-component model I talked about. So
okay.
For conditioning class, we focus a lot on the science. I say that, but about half the class is probably the science part.
Mm-hmm.
And then we do a lot of scenarios. We do a lot on culture change. We do a lot of on motivation. I've had some coaches Skype into that. Brett Bartholomew Skype in on that class. Talk about some of the things he does on creating buy-in and motivation and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I once again, I make sure they have the science. And in that class, then we kind of shift in, integrating that into program writing, and then in a little bit of the motivation type thing or the culture building. And in the applications class, I give every student a sport that we don't have, but they may encounter. So I'll usually look like the Ivy League schools that have every sport you can imagine, Harvard, Dartmouth, and Yale. And so we might have, crew and rowing and, squash. Trinity down the road from us got one of the winningest squash programs in college history.
Wow.
So I'll put together, just something different to take them out of their comfort zone.
Mm.
And then we'll take that sport and we do a needs analysis on it.
Okay.
So I'll assign a student to present each section that needs analysis, from screening to nutrition to, as we go through Olympic lifts to upper lower body pushes, pulls, those kinds of things, testing, all that. And so the student that's in charge that day, they're the coach, and everybody else are the athletes. So they take them through whatever program. They'll start off with a little presentation on what they're going to do to go through it. and then we'll kind of switch that up, and at the end, everybody sits and talks and really critiques what each other has done. So we're applying the knowledge they're learning, and then we also do a lot of progressions and things like that. But then also getting a lot of feedback on how they coach and how they're leading and that type of thing.
Okay. And then you touched on it earlier, right? But what does your stress management class look like?
Well, honestly, I haven't taught stress management in a few years.
Okay.
So it's, but it was basically, it was funny because everybody thought it was kind of like almost like a yoga type relaxation class.
Yeah.
But it's really the theology of stress.
Okay.
So a lot into that. We didn't know how to deal with stress and the different types of managing stress as far as diaphragmatic breathing to humor to music, things like that. But really a lot into the kind of the physiology behind stress.
Okay. And then moving forward is in terms of how you run the strength and conditioning department, right? What is your kind of approach in managing your staff there?
Well, I like really the bottom up leadership. I like getting a lot of feedback from them. I try to create a kind of like a circle of safety. I don't know if you've heard a lot of people talk about some of the really successful organizations have this, it's kind of like this, like I said, circle of safety where you can say anything in there and you're not going to be judged. I read in a book about Saturday Night Live doing that when they had all these big names that they would get in a room and come out with an idea, and as ridiculous as it may be, they're never going to criticize for it. Everybody's going to be open. And so, I try to create that atmosphere where my staff can say anything, recommend anything. We may not decide to do what they're recommending, but more times than not, it's a very positive, very good thing. So I try to, I definitely not an authoritarian or anything like that. I try to, I want feedback. I want some honest feedback. I do this all my classes too.
Yeah.
What did you like? What did you not like about the class? But what can I do to improve things?
Okay. And so how does your management style differ from volunteer intern all the way up to like an assistant strength coach?
It's pretty similar. I mean, one thing I do have, and I think anybody that has worked with me, that I do have expectations, and that I expect things to get done, whether you're an intern, whether you're an assistant. But I try to be pretty open with that style. Obviously, we have our internship program, so things the interns are going to go through. I encourage a lot of questions. Also, one thing I try to teach interns is how to ask a question and not question. And I think that's sometimes that's a skill, because I think in this field sometimes people feel like they're being questioned what they're doing when really they're just the intern or someone's just trying to ask them a question.
Yeah.
So, but I encourage them really about pretty much the same way. I think everybody has some feedback. The more people you have, the more eyes you have out there, whether they're an intern or whether they're a full-time assistant. They can have some feedback. So I would try to keep it just very open.
Yeah. Okay. So what do you kind of look for when hiring for different positions, kind of within your staff?
I look for. Basically, it's interesting. The way that works with my staff, I have GAs for the most part. I have 6 GAs. Actually, I do have we just actually hired another professor that, Mary Kate Fight, who is going to be our my assistant director of strength and conditioning.
Okay.
Teaching, so another teacher coach person, which is the first time we've had this exact scenario ever. We used to have a little bit of help, but it's going to be really so interesting because that's going to change a lot. So that's going to be nice to have another staff, faculty, full-time person helping with strength and conditioning.
Most definitely.
So that's great, but. For all the GAs, it's very interesting. They come in and they intern for a year, then they can become GAs their second year. So really, they're interviewing almost that entire first year to be a graduate assistant. I mean, I look for students that are going to obviously be able to coach, but I really want character and work ethic are the two biggest things I look for.
Okay.
if I can tell they have good character, they're going to be someone our athletes can look up to, and they just work their tails off.
Yeah.
In the I can teach people to program. We can bring them along, but the two biggest things are character and work ethic.
I like that. Okay, so moving forward on some application tips for young coaches, right? What are some general format tips for like resume and cover letter that you might have?
Well, one thing, honestly, I recommend people go on an NSCA website and look up Ron McKeefery's video from a coaches conference a couple years ago on resume writing and cover letters. And that's outstanding what he does, and even in his book, he covers that. But what I look for when I read a cover letter is I want to know why should I look at the resume when I read the cover letter.
Okay.
I want to I want that to be summary. What about you makes me want to flip the page and go to that next resume? And I know Ron talks about that as well. So the big thing is get your resume looked at by someone in the field you're going into. I have not with applications for the school and grad program, and then I have every student. I go over their resume with them. Whether undergrad or grad, they go to strength and conditioning. So I'm looking at well over 100, 150 resumes a year, which a lot of directors strength and conditioning will look at even more than that. But oftentimes they'll go to the school, the school career center, and they'll come up with a resume that's more for like a business job or something like that. And I think in strength and conditioning, we look for things a little bit different. Yeah. So I think that's the key. Have someone in the field look at your resume. Okay. Other mistakes I see coaches make are just they put jobs on there like as a busboy or whatever they were, or waiting tables, things like that. You don't need to know that stuff. Yeah. Just put everything you've done in the field, qualifications, your education, that type of thing. I think. Okay. Enough to show why you're qualified for the job, but we don't need to know the other stuff. If you're volunteering, I love to see that. Someone's volunteering at your high school, you volunteer with Special Olympics, anything like that. I love to see those kind of things, but we don't need to know if you mowed lawns or whatever. Okay.
And so on that same vein, right, when should internships be removed from the resume?
That's an interesting question. I've never been asked that before. It depends on, I think internships show that you're willing to work for free. So that's a good thing. I mean, I don't know if they ever should. You get to a point where you're not building your resume anymore, where you don't apply for jobs, people come looking for you for jobs. Maybe at that point, I guess. Okay. So I like to see them on there because I think the worst thing a coach could ever say is I'm not doing anything for free anymore. You gotta pay me. Yeah. I mean, I volunteer all the time and do all kinds of stuff. I think it's just part of the field. So I don't think you necessarily need to take them off there.
Okay. And then moving forward with the application, right? If it's up to the applicant's discretion, how many references should be listed, and who should those references be?
Well, I think generally I like to see at least 3. Okay. And I'd like one from everyone you've interned with. And I don't know if I can say you can have too many, but I don't know. I don't think you need to put like 3 or 4 pages of references. But if you've interned with someone, and especially it's someone that if I'm getting an application, I mean, the field's so small, I know a lot of people. But if I get an application, say, and they interned at Merrimack College, for instance, and Mike Kamal, Coach Kamal was my ever GAs. Look, if his name's not on there, I'm going to wonder why. Yeah. So it's important to put at least the references of everyone you've interned with.
Okay. And so moving forward with your development a little bit, right, what are some resources that have had a big impact on you, whether it's a book, podcast, conversation with somebody, or anything like that?
Really, all the above. I just try to constantly, I average at least a book a week as far as reading books, whether Audible or actually reading, listen to podcasts. I love going to conferences and just talking to people. There's times where I don't get very many sessions because I'm just talking to other coaches.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. You learn from each other. And I think just, I don't know if anything specific, I mean, but there's just continuing that to educate yourself, being a lifelong learner.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm lucky. I have almost an hour drive each way. And people are like, think that's kind of crazy, but I've been doing it 22 years now, and it gives me 2 hours a day to do those types of things. Listen to Audible, listen to a podcast, call another coach and talk to them.
Yeah.
I don't know if I answered your question, but I think just continuing to I learned something from everything I read.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. And I think that's important, right? Because a lot of people are looking for only specific resources, whereas, like you said, like you can learn something from, just any experience you're involved in. So I really like that. And then
and I think
go ahead.
The other thing I get is don't just read only strength and conditioning.
Yeah.
I read a lot from everything from like business development. How can I apply that as a director to just different autobiographies and leadership books. I just finished last week Sea Stories by Admiral William McRaven. Stories as a special ops person. Some really cool things in there he said, and that I immediately send out on. We use GroupMe with our staff and students to sort out little things. So I'll immediately send out some quotes from that book. So I think it's important to just don't get so zeroed in on strength and conditioning or periodization or whatever, but really try to read a whole gamut of things.
I like that. Okay, so moving forward, just to this last segment, right? What are some quotes that you live by, if you have any?
Well, I think my favorite quote was I got it out of Bobby Bowden's book, and it wasn't a quote by him. It was one of his assistant coaches that said, "Remember, every athlete is someone's son or daughter." And to me, as a parent, that means a lot. I would never want to treat an athlete in a manner that I wouldn't want someone treating my daughter. So to me, that was really powerful. And another one I think was by Joshua Wooden, John Wooden's dad, which was no whining, no complaining, no excuses.
I love it.
Those are the two that I have on the bottom, alternating on pages of our staff manual.
Okay.
Probably my two biggest, favorite quotes.
Yeah. No, I love it. Okay. Is there a thought or experience from your past that you've held on to that's made a big difference in your life now?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple. And it's funny. I had an awesome coach named Al Lind. We grew up in Anderson, Indiana, Highland High School, and football and wrestling coach, and just he made you feel like you're important. And the whole adage, no one really remembers what you say; they remember how you made them feel. So he made me feel like I was always important, always, whether it was football or whether it was wrestling. And then I also have had some other coaches that I remember. One in particular, on this. To say who it was, but yelled and screamed and swore at me all the time. Anytime I made a mistake. Yeah. And that's helped me model me as help. I guess in my coaching development as well. Is what I'm trying to say. I can't get that. Just both those. One positive, one negative. One, always want to make someone feel good about themselves. Because I've been in a situation where I've had a coach of one of each coach versus kind of what Joe Ehrman talks about in inside out coaching. Yeah. Okay. What is the best advice that you've ever been given? Well, it's interesting. It doesn't have anything to do with strength and conditioning. Probably it was. I remember Marty Morris, who I mentioned before, is my coach I worked with at the University of Illinois. When I first got hired, he's like, max out your retirement account. As much money in your retirement account as you can, max out your contribution. And it's interesting at the time, I'm 24 years old. Like I go, well, but now that I'm 50, I'm glad I did that. Yeah. I think that is that's probably the biggest one. The other one that was related to the field would be Charlie Redmond, who was my department chair at when I got to Springfield and was the dean. basically, kind of the whole say yes to everything. And that's kind of, he knew if he asked me if I could teach stress management or I could teach presentation techniques, I'd be like, yeah, absolutely, I'll do that, because he had helped kind of groom me that way.
Yeah. Okay. No, I really like that, and I think those are very wise things as well. So, in contrast to that, what is the worst advice you've ever been given? It's a tough one.
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know if I've ever been given some really, really bad advice. I think one quote I've heard that I at first I liked was motivation is easy, get rid of the unmotivated. And I think that's kind of the old school mentality.
Yeah.
I think, our job, as athletes change, we have to change with the times. So I don't know if I've ever given some just really horrible advice.
Okay, fair enough.
And I hope really horrible advice.
Yeah. So. Fair enough. Okay. Last question kind of here to round this thing out. What are some projects that you're currently working on? How can people kind of reach out to you and follow your journey?
Well, I'm just continually going with coaching development. I think I've started to speak more and more at the national conferences. I believe I was going to be speaking. I did 2 presentations last year at the NSA Coaches Conference in Indianapolis. I think I'm going to be doing at least one this January in San Antonio. I'll admit I'm very poor with social media. We do put some stuff out on. If you look up SC Strength,
okay.
I have a assistant that puts most of that out.
Okay.
But I that's probably the best way. I go into conferences and talking about what we're doing. My basically my project is always just finding ways to develop coaches. That's what I'll be talking about at the conference. If anybody's get a hold of me, my email is bathomps@springfieldcollege.edu, or you can just go on if you don't have time to write it down. You can just go on to Springfield College Athletics website, click on strength and conditioning, you can find all my information there.
Okay, awesome. Coach, well, thank you so much for your time. This has been really awesome. So I really appreciate it, and hopefully we can connect again soon in the future.
All right, sounds good. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I think it's great you're putting this out there. I love listening to podcasts and hearing what other people are doing. But I appreciate you letting me be a part of this.
No problem, Coach. I'll talk to you soon.